Welcome to Thrive Thursday. We're super excited if you are present with us. If you are watching this on replay, you can reference the attached document in the YouTube description. This call is open to all real estate professionals from any brokerages, any loan officers, any title reps. We talk all things real estate every single Thursday, and we want to watch agents thrive. There's no dress code for this call. If you're driving from a showing or you want to log on and just listen, you can do that. Today, I did an exciting workout on an infrared bike. So as you can see, my hair is pulled back, and this is the end of the day style for me today. I'm not looking all glamorous, but we're here to talk about something actually super important that has happened. And I think sometimes real estate agents are so focused on lead gen, lead conversion, how do we get listings? How do we work with buyers? But we also do need to know several laws that happen that do affect our industry. And if you guys are currently working with investors or even some sellers, anything to do with cash transactions, drop a 1 in the chat. Because at the end of the day, I do think that people don't understand how often this happens, but it does happen quite often. So I have a special guest here with us today. Her name is Miss Myra Green, and she's been in the title industry for a very long time. She actually is the branch manager over our office here and actually several offices with University Title. She is so graciously, even while she has a very bad cold, so if you have a hard time hearing her, I will repeat and speak for her, is jumping on the call tonight to talk about the law that came into effect March 1st. And I just want to know, everyone out there, has anyone heard of this law that just came into effect March 1st? Anybody? Drop something in the chat. Take yourself off mute. It's actually interesting because I feel like, Myra, the way these laws are announced, it's not like we get notice, right? So how was the new law actually announced?
Yeah, so in research, the underwriters have been putting this into practice for a few years, probably almost 8 or 9 years ago, looking to make sure that they're collecting as much data as they can to verify that these funds are good funds. It hadn't really been rolled out to the agents in our industry until March 1st, and that was really just kind of dropping the hammer. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the FinCEN regulation. They've seen it on some disclosures, but not so much in the agents world. So I think, the law coming about, it didn't seem too new to the lenders or some of the people in the title insurance place, but it is new to some of the consumers. They want to know how they're being taxed. How is this different than the 1099? And so when the federal government rolled it out, it wasn't really communicated like I would have liked to seen it. We were doing all that prep over the last 8 to 10 years in the industry. And sometimes regulation, it's just interpreted differently by different people taking on risk. And so when this one was presented, it was just rug pulled out from the bottom of you, and going forward, this is what's going to happen. And I say that kind of makes everybody scramble. But I
think it's important for you guys to understand. I'm going to share my screen really quick to an actual document that Myra so graciously prepared, because I do think that, how many of you guys are flipping real estate as well? And, you don't have to write anything in the chat of whether you do or you don't report your proceeds to the IRS. But what's crazy about this new rule is that the title company is now going to report it. And so if you think about this, if you go flip a house and you make 50 grand on a HUD or an Alta, whatever you want to call it, nobody knows that happened unless you choose to report it. And so this new, it's FinCEN, correct? Myra, I'm saying that correctly? The new FinCEN residential real estate reporting rule is now that the title company has to report this money if you are closing in an entity like a trust or an LLC involving a cash transaction. And from what I understand, before you dig into this, Myra, that what's even more crazy is that the title company requests from the seller and the buyer specific information and that must be provided. And let's say someone doesn't provide it, or the agent doesn't encourage their client to provide it, the closing will actually be stopped.
That is
Correct?
correct. That is correct. Yes. And that is something that I think is going to make everybody really start floundering. And we need to get this information up front as soon as possible. So if you're looking to write contract with any type of buyer that is wanting to close in an entity, like an LLC, it could be a trust, it could be a land trust. All of those types of entities have to be reported. You need to identify who the beneficiary is and respond to our request for information when we send that out to you. As sometimes at the time of you writing a contract, you may not know that there's an entity present. It may be that when we get the title commitment back, we see that there's an entity present within the deed chain. So it's going to get a little tricky to implement, and I imagine it's going to impact the speed of some of the contracts where we're having these LLCs come in and purchase it, the investor world for sure.
Well, now we have, throughout all brokerages, the consumer choice disclosure form that's being required. I do know that I've seen in my back office that when you have an LLC on a contract, they are asking you for the LLC signer documents, which again, no matter what title company you're working with, that's your choice. I know that mine is requesting them up front, because the last thing that, like, you guys are requesting it up front now, Myra, because we've seen situations where if I'm the listing agent, the buyer's agent brings the contract, it's in an LLC. I have no way to validate unless I go to DPBR or whatever I want to do and try to find, or Sunbiz, I'm sorry, and find the LLC documents. Is that LLC valid? What do the articles of incorporation state, and who is a legal signer? So really, not only does the FinTech residential rule come into play, but it really spirals us as agents into, we need to be doing our due diligence before we take a buy-side contract as a listing agent, or before we write a contract for a client that maybe we just started working with or we've worked with for a long time, to validate, are they even legal to sign for that LLC?
Yeah.
Like, is it even legal? Let's start over here with, like, does this rule affect every transaction, and who are we exactly talking about, Ms. Myra?
Yeah, so this is, again, it's trying to make sure that these cash transactions are getting reported confidently through the IRS. So it's a buyer that is purchasing a property and is an entity or an LLC and a trust, a land trust, those types of vestings, and they're not using a loan, right? Because the lenders go through their own verification, they have to report. So it's really cash transactions, residential properties, where the buyer is purchasing in the name of an entity.
What about hard money?
Hard money is tricky. They should, I love that word. But I think they're trying to work, making sure the title company is doing it. But
And what about private capital?
private and secure, those are technically loan transactions. And so the expectation is that those lenders are reporting on it. They haven't really pushed that out to us with a clear regulatory standard.
And just to be clear, that you are not going to find a title company, you might, that is not going to follow this rule, because, Myra, what is the penalty for a title company who chooses not to follow the rule?
Oh, it's bad. It's really, really bad. Some of these are well over into $500,000 to $1 million per claim. So you figure you might have two entities on a transaction, and so it's going to be $500,000 per one, each one. So it gets very pricey, and I know it can be frustrating getting paperwork to us or finding out how to get it to us quickly, just email work. Your guys' jam is you're out there getting houses and you're on the road, you're not sitting in front of your email like we are. And so we're trying to make that as easy as possible. And you hit the nail on the head, Betsy, is if you can come to these transactions when you're placed in order with as much information as you can, it just makes that it decreases the time it takes to close it. So, I think that's really what we're trying to say is get to know your buyers, get to know your sellers, answer these questions, let them know that they're going to have to be, they're going to be reported on by the title company. If the money's transferring and changing, we have to report on it. So,
and then you're sending them a form, or a title company is sending them a form, and they do have to fill out the form. Now, I did find out thanks to Jay, that's also with University Title. One of my investors closes like 4 deals a month. I list them for them. I did ask, when the form is being filled out, does it say you're an authorized signer or whatever? An assistant can fill out the form for someone. It does not ask them to validate like who they are. So if you do have an investor, let's say a high profile investor or someone you're working with, they can have the task be done by someone else. But at the end of the day, it does have to be filled out. And so what Myra's saying with slowing down closings is like, if all these paperworks are not provided up front, if everything is not getting filled out in a timely manner, here you are now chasing the client.
Yeah.
And so if you're a listing agent, you should be following up with your title rep saying, hey, did the buyer turn their stuff in? And then following up with the agent. It's no different trying to get an extension addendum signed, trying to get your inspection repairs addendum signed. You still have to work with the other agent to make sure it's getting done, even if it's not your client that is forced to then fill out the information. And I think that that's where agents do drop the ball. I mean, title does have a responsibility, but we should be driving the bus in the transaction and controlling our clients, right? So obviously we'll not harp on this too much, but what counts as a residential property? Everybody knows homes with 1 to 4 units. Remember, you're going to see a lot of this, my friends, who are selling duplexes, triplexes, and quads. Those are residential transactions. However, they're still mostly investor based. There's not a lot of people. There's a few that people will use a VA loan and buy investments. But the other thing that's kind of crazy is you guys know that it's condo and co-ops, mixed use buildings with up to 4 residential units, apartment buildings, but also vacant land intended for future residential construction. So even if somebody is not going to do residential construction, if they're qualifying it as a vacant land purchase, which how many of you guys deal with vacant land cash transactions? A lot. And they're almost always closed in an LLC. So those are transactions where we think they're easy. You got the vacant land disclosure, you got the vacant land residential contracts. Well, now you're hit with this, and you guys need to inform, your clients for sure. Here, Maya, if you could just list out these one more time, especially for a couple people that just joined, like what types of purchases are included, which is these cash, and can you kind of go through those really quick?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you kind of hit the nail on the head when you were asking about the hard money and stuff. So if it's not an entity that regularly reports to the IRS, then we're going to send out this FinCEN invitation. Types of purchases, it's really focusing for cash buyers that are purchasing any type of real estate in the name of an entity. We've had to kind of caveat that because our markets are unique. We can flip them, we can assign. And so anything that's an all cash transaction, if you're receiving seller financing, if the banking institution is a private institution, or anybody that maybe doesn't normally report on a monthly time frame to the IRS.
Oh, seller financing. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
That is interesting. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. And then obviously you guys understand who the buyer must be, but this is a really great document for you to reference: an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, a trust, or any other legal entity. And remember, just like Myra said at the beginning, if you write a contract in John Doe's name and you have the box checked that they cannot release a liability, but they may assign, that probably means they may think of then forming a new LLC, probably with that address after they pass inspection. You write an addendum, and now you're halfway through this transaction and you got to get this information turned in. So you have to pay attention to that. It's extremely important. And as an agent, you guys need to follow along and get things done swiftly. So at the end, you're not trying to scramble and you have a delay with closing. And then what is going to be reported, Myra, to the IRS?
The proceeds that money was provided to them. So it's going to be based on funding. We're not going to report until the file actually closes and money exchanges hands. And it's going to be on the proceeds that are issued to either party. So the seller information will show, and then we're going to make sure that the buyers purchasing cash transactions with their money, that those are good funds. So it's going to be reported, basically our entire disbursement sheet with the exception of vendors. So proceeds to buyers and sellers are what's going to be reported.
Now, if you guys want $1 million piece of advice, really quick,
Yeah.
$1 million piece of advice, agents. So when you're dealing with cash transactions and you don't have financing involved, you can't always get away with this. But for instance, let's say that someone's purchasing a quadplex and the purchase price is 560, and there may be some random furniture, there may be some personal property involved. You can always record the purchase price as 540 and have the $20,000 in personal property be an additional $20,000 that would be paid to the seller. But by lowering the purchase price, yes, you could negotiate commission, but at the end of the day, by lowering the purchase price and then it paying for personal property, the purchase price is lower that then is also reported, and taxes are lower. So if you guys are working with investors and you're trying to structure these deals, you need to think about those things. Now, banks, I've done this on, $1.5 million commercial deals, Myra, where the bank will go, Betsy, you don't have $40,000 in personal property. And I was trying to help the client. You know what I mean? Like, let's make the purchase price 960 and let's do 40K in personal property. Now, you're not supposed to, and especially because this is recorded, include personal property as refrigerators, ceiling fans. It would be like an Airbnb situation where there is furniture, there is window treatments, there's all these things, but there is ways that you can do that legally. So think about that with a cash transaction. That may help. But I really want to talk to my flippers. So how many people on this call flip real estate? Because what you have to think about and speak to your tax guy about is, if I show 50 grand in proceeds, I may not really be making 50 grand. And so you need to figure out a way to speak to your tax representative on, hey, what do my write-offs look like? You have to get down to the nitty gritty on what you spent, cost of permits, cost of supplies, all those different things. Because remember, this is the amount that's going to be sent to the IRS. Now, think about it. If you guys get a 1099 from your brokerage showing you made $350,000 in a year, you obviously have write-offs and expenses. So you really need to strategize now more than ever with your tax strategist, because this is what's going to be reported to the IRS is what's on the HUD, the purchase price and the proceeds that you received.
Right.
So how will this affect the closing, Myra, in general?
Timing, really. And that's what's most important to people on this call, is how quickly can I get this, contract closed. And so without this information upfront, if they're not, going into our system and updating this information timely, it's just going to delay the closing for being able to move forward. And it doesn't just delay it for the agents, it delays it for everybody. And that could potentially leave people losing lenders. So we know the importance of the timetable. If we can get this information and get disciplined in getting this information ahead of time, it really will make the smoothing closing that we all pray for. So again, just an electronic invite currently. There is an option if you are buying and selling multiple properties and you're sending us transactions. There is a way to go to the federal government and obtain a PIN ID. So you don't have to keep filling out this paperwork every single time we get a call.
Oh, I love that. I get to tell my clients about that. Okay.
Yeah, it's really cool. I got that too, Betsy. So I'll send that out. If you are doing and purchasing several homes throughout the year or month in those names, then we can certainly use the PIN route. Then
how long is the PIN ID good for? Is it like TSA pre-check? Is it like a passport? We don't have to renew?
I don't know that it requires a change as long as that entity is in good standing and reporting.
Okay.
So if you close that LLC, that PIN's probably not going to be valid anymore.
Okay. Awesome. So more forms and questions, requests for legal documents, additional verification steps. And then these are the transactions that are exempt. Just so you guys know. You want to go through those, Myra, really quick?
Sure. Court order transfers, that is in regards to divorce settlement. If you're putting something into a trust, it's not, those will be exempt from defense and reporting, because those are usually reported in other ways on your taxes. Bankruptcy transfers, if you are being forced to liquidate your assets due to bankruptcy, then those will be exempt. However, that is always going to be taken a closer look at because of the multiple forms of bankruptcy somebody can file. Transfers after death or probate, heirship, those will not be reported as income and receivable income. They receive that through probate. Those are also reported to the IRS differently. Um, Divorce related transfers. This is usually something in the settlement agreement where they get the home and an additional equity value. It's very rare that anybody has been documenting that they're getting an additional $60,000 in that settlement agreement and they're wrapping it up into the closing transaction when they transfer.
Yeah,
So,
let's leave the divorced people alone, man.
yeah,
If they're
yeah,
going through a divorce, dude, and they're getting some cash, especially us women, now if it was Danny or Chris Joda, let's report them, but like, let's give me and Ellie a break. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I think that that's important for you guys to really understand that. I know I'm joking, but what already was reported was reported. It was really the people flipping real estate, buying things cash, those things are not reported. And it's kind of like when you buy a car, or you sell a car and you have to turn those things in, et cetera. So yeah, that makes a huge difference. And then no consideration trust transfers.
yeah. So that's on your quick claim deeds, right?
Okay.
Not really going to be for the warranty deed, so we're not going to report on that. And that really comes down to I'm deeding this to my best friend, or I'm just deeding my interest out of the home, right? And if they go to a title company and that title company says, "We'll help you do that," there's no consideration to that. We'll put zero because no money's exchanging hands, so there's no reason to report those.
Okay. And then what's 1030? Oh, 1031 exchanges. What's up with that?
31 exchanges, because those are supposed to be like for like value. So there shouldn't be an additional, discrepancy in the price that wouldn't be reported on. It's already getting reported on the initial. So you're changing it. It's more like a transfer and a trade. And so we don't report on those.
And then corrective deeds.
Corrective deeds is something that a service that a title company can offer. Re-recording a deed that had a value of say 1.5 million because somebody forgot a middle initial, we're not going to report on those.
Okay. And then obviously individuals buying in cash in their own names.
Yep.
We're not going to report those people.
We don't. No, only
Now, what if someone tried to get away with the rule and they did it in the individual name, they bought it, and then they later changed it to an LLC?
I can't say that it would be caught. So
but it's a possibility
to maneuver around. I've seen it happen, and I think a lot of people kind of read between the lines and are willing to take that risk. But yeah, that is the way.
And the purchaser needs to understand as well, if you do purchase in your own name, you're subject to being sued. It's not a protected asset. So I mean, I wouldn't be encouraging my clients to try to find a workaround there. But just so everyone understands, FinCEN and what it is the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. We have a financial crimes. It's like the FBI for real estate flippers, friends. That's what it is, Myra. You're going to use that.
It is.
You're stealing that. It's the FBI for all of us real estate flippers. They want their money. They want to get paid. So this is a new rule to prevent criminals from hiding money in real estate. The rule requires certain real estate transactions to be reported to the government. If you have just joined us or joined us halfway through, this is kind of what we discussed. I told everyone it was going to be a quicker call this evening. I do want to open up for any type of Q&A. And if we can, I think Myra did a great 30-minute recap. Drop in the chat. Thank you, Myra. She has a really bad cold, and she still took time out of her evening to join us tonight. So if we could throw some sevens in the chat for Myra. If anyone wants to open up for Q&A, you can type it in the chat, or you can take yourself off of mute and ask anything you want about the new FBI police for real estate flippers. Just one more thing to make, real estate agents' life easy, right? And like I said at the beginning, I'll say this again, no matter what title company you're working with, you should be the bus driver in your transaction. You can allow the buyer, the seller to feel like the driver, and you be the passenger, but really you should be driving the bus. And with that being said, as you're driving the bus, you should be guiding them along. And what I did with my investors was I prepared them up front. I didn't just allow my title company to bear the burden. I said, guys, however you want to handle this, but with the people doing 4 or 5 cash transactions a month, it does get like cumbersome. It's annoying. So knowing about that PIN, the federal PIN is great. I'm so glad that you brought that up. I'm going to be reporting that back to my clients. Do any of you guys have questions for Myra? No one has any questions. Does anyone care about the FBI police reporting this information? Do you care, Danny?
Yes.
Yes. I think it's just really good to take a little bit of time to just know about this. All of you content creators out there, really good thing to post right now. Like, hey, flippers, are you aware of the new law that happened March 1st? Hey, this is something that I am informed about, that I am an expert in, that I know I'm working with a title rep or a title company that is seasoned in this. All of those things make you guys look like rock stars. Myra, can you drop, how would they communicate with you if they wanted to communicate with you? Could you drop that in the chat, your work number? If any of you would like to reach out to Myra, please feel free to do so. She will put her information in the chat. And as always, friends, if you're watching this on replay, you can grab that document that's in the description on the YouTube link. You should still be able to view the chat. So if you want to snag Myra's contact information, it is in the chat. And then it's also going to be in the description on the replay video. If you're watching us live, we love to have you. We have some really great Thrive Thursdays coming up. One that I'm going to be doing is in particular on acquiring divorce listings. And I'm going to go through a strategy, a playbook, finding data, how to market to them. The other one that my boy Earl King is doing, he has never paid for a lead in his life. He has built an agent network. He has done buyers, sellers. He has commercial coffee shops listed. He gets all of his business via networking. He's going to be coming up in about 2 weeks. Vincent Acuri is going to be doing the $2 listing note that builds a 6-figure pipeline. That is going to be a call not to miss. So we have 3 good calls coming up in March. I appreciate all of you guys coming, listening to Miss Myra. We appreciate you always for thriving with us on Thursdays. And all of you have an amazing evening. We will see you next week.
Thank you, everybody.